The three personal laws, Kandyan law, Thesawalamai law, and Muslim personal law, have separate rules for marriage, divorce, custody, inheritance, and property rights that often discriminate against women. Reforms are needed to ensure women's rights are protected. We are here with Shreen Saroor to discuss these matters. Shreen is the founder of Women's Action Network in Sri Lanka, a collective of women's group that empowers and advocates for women and women survivors of war, violence, and injustices. Welcome, Shreen. Could you briefly explain what kind of challenges, specific challenges women and girls face when it comes to personal law?
So these personal laws have discriminatory provisions, particularly with regard to inheritance, property rights. Also, particularly Muslim personal law has discriminatory provisions with regard to women's, particularly it discriminates women against divorce, maintenance, and various forms of application of these laws also ban women entering those process, and also it doesn't allow women to be equal partner in the marriage contracts. And the huge concern that we women are having right now is with regard to child marriage, because in Sri Lanka, because of this personal law, Muslim personal law, child marriage is legitimized. So the Muslim personal law says children under the age of 12 can be married off with the permission of Qazi, which means minimum age of marriage for Muslim girls is 0. So this also exempt Muslim girls from statutory rape. Usually what happens is there is a possibility of the person, if she is under 16, can be married off to the rapist. The other thing is, if a underage girl is married off to a man, every day she is getting raped. It applies to other children of this country, but the Muslim child, she is having intimate relationship or intercourse with her husband. So therefore you can't prosecute. So therefore, all in all, these personal laws violates the constitutional rights, particularly the fundamental rights, Article 12 of the Constitution that talks about non-discrimination. But these laws, in the name of customs and religion, violates women and girls' rights.
The Sri Lankan government recently committed to enabling the National Action Plan for Women, Peace and Security. Let's take the MMDA example because we've been talking about it quite a bit. How can such reforms help ensure peace and security for women in Sri Lanka?
So UN Security Council Resolution 1325, which talks about peace and security for women, is very specific with regard to post-war context. And in the post-war context, women have to be equally consulted with regard to any form of reforms. In this context, we are also considering not only the post-war structural discrimination, but traditional structural discrimination, inequalities. So with regard to Muslim women, it is very interesting when there was consultation with regard to constitutional reform under the Yahapalaniya government, with current president was the Prime Minister. There was conversation all over Sri Lanka, and certain part of the countries, Muslim women came forward and talked about structural inequality in the context of Muslim Marriage and Divorce Act. Since 1951, how women have been fighting for reform, how it has discriminated women and girls, particularly access to education for girls. It's compulsory for any child in the country to finish up to A-level, right? Compulsory education, whereas Muslim girls, they are not, right? So therefore, I'm very happy to see that the National Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security includes these structural inequality, including Muslim Marriage and Divorce Act, which need immediate reform.
Right. Can you tell us about the struggle to get these reforms passed in Parliament to become actual law?
The stumbling block comes from our parliamentarian. Now these laws, these personal laws, are implemented by the state. It is the state responsibility to reform these, because particularly if you look at the Qazi system that is implementing MMDA, the money comes from taxpayers' money, right? It is couched in the Justice Ministry budget allocation. So how can Sri Lanka justify women not being part of Qazi system or board of Qazi? So it's very complicated for us to see that our Muslim parliamentarian are failing their duty towards their constituency and why they have been elected. Every time the reform process starts or conversation starts, they come, either they brush the process against, or they bring in draconian changes that are taking the MMDA backward.
What can the general public and policymakers do to make sure that these reforms are passed?
Number one thing is that we have to have unified family code that treats men and women equal in the family, and also with regard to inheritance, property, transfer and disposal of property, divorce, maintenance, child custody, and all those things need to be looked at so that men and women are treated equally. And men and women have to be treated equally in dignified manner. So we need to have a family court system that could sit in the district court where family related matters are being taken up. Then with regard to Muslim community particularly, this general marriage ordinance, when it defines the marriage, section 64 says two Muslims who profess Islam cannot get married, which means you are not even giving an option for women who want to opt out of Muslim Marriage Divorce Act to get into general marriage ordinance. So your option need to be given. Then with regard to child marriage, age of marriage has to be 18 for all the children of this country. Then penal code need to be amended so that children who are forced into sexual relationship under 16, including Muslim girls, the crime comes under statutory rape. And all in all, we need to also make sure that our property laws, these things should come under general civil contractual property laws, not couch this under customary principles or religion.
In the post-war conflict period, like how does Thesawalamai laws affect the women and girls in the north and east?
So we know that there is large number of female-headed households, and also we know in Sri Lanka, in the post-war context, that we are grappling with lots of disappearance, right? So lots of women have lost their family members to the war, or they have handed over their men and they have not come back. So in that context, many of them wanted justice. So therefore, they are not taking death certificates, right? So if they are married in the Jaffna area of the marriage system, they can't transfer, lease or sell their properties without their husband's consent. Even if the property is in their name, if it is a dowry property that she has inherited from her mother, she has to have her husband's consent. Now she is looking for her disappeared husband. So the problem is that other men in the family can enjoy her property, whereas she, while looking for her missing husband, while saying I need justice, saying that I don't want a death certificate, I need justice, is denied access to her own property.
Have there been any recent push or lobbying towards reforming Thesawalamai specifically?
In fact, I think our conversation with travel politicians, particularly TNA, they have acknowledged the fact, the leadership has acknowledged the fact this need to be reformed. And some parliamentarians said they are ready to bring in private member bill. But with the Muslim community, it has been extremely difficult. 40 years of, it's older than our civil war, that the Muslim women have been struggling to get this Muslim personal law reform. And also this law particularly is abused against marginalized poor women. It's the state responsibility to make sure that women and girls are treated equally in this country, irrespective of what their religion is, what their region is, what their status is.
Shreen, how hopeful are you that any of these reforms will come through in the near future?
Well, I can't give you positive answer to this because I myself have struggled reforming Muslim personal law for the last at least 15 years or so. It's going to be very tough for us to get this reform done, but that doesn't stop us from demanding for reform, struggling for reform, and ensure that the state does this reform and make it this state responsibility.
Right. Thank you very much, Shreen. That was a very insightful conversation. Thank you for your time and joining us in this conversation. And
Thank you very
debating
much,
this.
Chris. It's a timely discussion. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.